Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to your cybersecurity series. My name is Vlad, and for episode 18, I want to do a recap of all the previous videos to really show you that there is a link in between all those topics, and it's really meant to be a comprehensive, accessible curriculum helping you engage and going further into cybersecurity. So we started back in January 2025 with my very first video on the three main properties in cybersecurity. They are easy to remember. Every time you think of cyber, you should think of CIA, not for Central Intelligence Agency, but rather confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And basically, what we discussed in episode 2 is that those three properties, they are not exclusive or not specific to cybersecurity. Especially the integrity or the availability, they have been a key concern of all the IT professionals for many years. But the real difference between the traditional IT mindset and the cybersecurity mindset that we have today is that we always assume that there is an external or internal threat, someone malicious that is willing to penetrate somehow our system and our infrastructure and cause some damage to the company. And really, by adopting this change of mindset and thinking of security from the attacker perspective, we have some different discussions and we build the defenses differently. It's no longer about compliance, it's really about risk management. In the third episode, I give you some arguments on how and why really you should care about cybersecurity, mostly because it's all about data, and data sometimes is what we call personal data associated with individuals, and you could be also impacted even if the cyber acts or the cyber attacks are happening in a different company. If you have been a customer there, that you might have left some personal information, and in the wrong hands, those information could be used against you, especially in impersonation or opening loans on your behalf, stealing your identity, or committing further schemes. It's not only about individuals, of course, it's really about companies as well. And cybersecurity is interesting because it really has the potential of immediately raising an issue to the board, so to the executive committee or the highest level of management within a company. When you think of cybersecurity, and for example, if it impacts the production, if it impacts the media, everybody is going to be aware of it. So you see that quite from the beginning, all the key personnel, all the top managers are going to be involved. The CEO, of course, to defend the company reputation, perhaps the head of sales, if there is an impact on the product or the deliveries, your COO, so the head of operations for the different facilities, the CIO, so the head of information technologies and IT officer in general. Those guys are going to be impacted as well. You might have the HR, communication, legal. All of the top executives are going to be around the table trying to solve the crisis at hand, which is why cybersecurity should really be brought into the conversation at the highest level to make sure that progressively all the protections and measures are implemented properly down the line. We talked in episode 5 about the different opportunities, and I really wanted to give you a 360 overview of all the jobs and different profiles or career or paths that you can go, essentially focusing also on those which do not require a technical background. And there are plenty of them. In the future videos, I will try to do deep dives on each of the jobs, each of the competences, to show you that some of them are really accessible and you can really jump into cybersecurity. Of course, you need to have the foundations, and that's what this course is all about, giving you a central basic understanding, and then you can perhaps decide to move into cybersecurity and redirect your career in this amazing field of expertise. Episode 6, as I said, cybersecurity is all about threats, malicious actors, and it's important to really understand who we are facing. So there are different profiles. I propose to use 6 of them, and trying to understand what are they really looking for, what are their techniques, what do they want, what are the usual modus operandi that they follow. And all of that is interesting because from a defense perspective, we need to be rational. If you are a small or a medium business, you cannot really fight against intelligence services or top hackers in the world. You need to play your own field, and for that, you need to understand who you are really facing and what are they looking for, what are the controls or the mechanisms that you can put in place accordingly. I was not planning to, but episode 7, there was this amazing news that was widespread on internet. A French woman was unfortunately conned for more than $800,000, so almost €1 million. It was a really long con. It took more than a year, and it really focused on the human factors, also to show you that cybersecurity is not only about IT systems, it's also about, just like in poker, playing the man or playing the victim, um, playing on her emotions. And we know that thanks to the investigation, the people behind this attack were, let's say, categorized as amateur hackers because those images and all the fake pictures that they sent, I mean, it's really looking amateurish. But they were based in Nigeria. There are some traditional scammers and fraudsters that prey on vulnerable men and women out there, especially the elderly. Episode 8, because basically after this discussion on Brad Pitt and the incident and the scammers, it immediately, at least to me, raised the question, but how do we know who is behind? What are the clues or the traces that the hackers leave behind that really allows the law enforcement or the investigations in general to really identify precisely who is behind the attack? How can we attribute hacks to certain populations? And that's really what episode 8 was all about, understanding what are the different traces and trying to build profiles in relation with episode 6. Speaking of hackers and profiles, as I said, Brad Pitt was really amateur hackers. Now we moved into the organized crime, and organized crime is the most prolific, abundant type of hackers there is today in let's say in the cyber world. And I gave you 3 examples. The first one was really focusing on the banking industry. So we talked about the Carbanak hack, where hackers stayed in the system for years, and that's really to show you how organized they are. We don't say organized crime just to give them a sense of sophistication. They are truly organized, and that's my first example, showing you that they can wait for months and years within an infrastructure before deciding to commit their malicious actions, in this case, stealing cash. Episode 10 was really to show you that you need to distinguish the technical success from a hack from the underlying objective. So here, in the context of the French election campaign, the Emmanuel Macron campaigning group was successfully hacked. So they successfully managed to get into the systems and steal some emails, steal some confidential information. So from a technical perspective, they were breached. However, from an underlying objective, which was to manipulate and tamper with the election, this had absolutely no impact. The timing was wrong. The fraud was, let's say, too obvious. So again, there has to be a distinction between the technical feasibility of a cyber attack and the technical consequences and the surrounding events or the political aspects of it. Episode 11 was again to show you that organized crime is truly organized, but this time in a different dimension. First, we talked about those hackers. They are people that have these kind of skills. Most of the time, they have an IT background, but on their own, they can only accomplish the technical part of the job. And it's really, in this case, the Ukraine cybercrime version, meaning that those IT specialists or hacking specialists combine their skills with financial experts. And without those financial experts, they would have never been able to conduct such an insider fraud, insider trading, because the guys managed to breach into newspapers, specific newspapers which have market information prior to the public. But understanding those financial documents really requires additional skills. So again, we really talk about organized crime because it's not only about IT. or cybersecurity personnel. It's about those hackers teaming up with other resources like financial analysts. And again, if you haven't watched this video, the total bill was more than hundreds of millions that were schemed. So we are not talking about petty money. After discussing organized crime, we moved into the juicy contenders, the most sophisticated hacks that you would ever see. Those are performed by the nation states, so what we call the intelligence services. And I give you probably the greatest example there is in the history of cybersecurity, which is rather small, a few years, maybe 30 years of existence for cybersecurity. But the idea is that this was an attack against the Iranian nuclear program, and more specifically, the uranium enrichment facilities in Natanz. And this story is so interesting, so complex that I decided to split into 4 different videos. Episode 12 really focuses on the surrounding politics and what were the different events from a geopolitical landscape surrounding those hacks. Episode 13, we focused on the technical components. How did the hackers successfully breached twice into the facilities which were not even connected to internet? Episode 14, we looked at what are the traces and the elements that allow us to think that yes, it was allegedly the US and Israel teaming up both together under the Operation Olympic Games against Iran. So we talked about those elements and what are the different theories, who helped them or might have helped them. And finally, episode 15 is all about the legacy, all about the aftermath of Stuxnet. It inspired generations of hackers. It also demonstrated that hacking industrial facilities is feasible. And I gave you also another example on Colonial Pipeline. So this was dated 20 and 21 in the US, also to show you that even if you are a powerful country as the United States of America, you can be both, let's say, on the hacking side and on the victim side, depending on the occasions and depending on the companies. It inspired more than just hackers. It also inspired pop culture. There were many consequences. But maybe one of the most, let's say, striking conclusions is that from a public perspective and a political perspective, we moved from thinking of cybersecurity as something just for the geeks or something just for compliance, setting protections, something that is really costing money. And then we started talking about cyber warfare. So we talked about cyber weapons, meaning that really cybersecurity became an advantage over the competition and a tool that could be used against adversary or foreign countries or foreign entities. And that has completely changed the landscape and the threat landscape all around cybersecurity. Of course, and again, episode 16 was not something that I had planned initially. Netflix released a new series called Zero Day, and I thought it would be also a nice commentary to help you distinguish the truly possible events from the liberties from the showmakers and all the events that are a bit either emphasized or completely extrapolated, just to show you that yes, hacking industrial facilities and having an impact on the public, it's feasible. I give you the example of Colonial Pipeline, Stuxnet, so it's not new, but doing it at such a scale that is depicted in the TV series, that's not yet, at least thankfully, not yet feasible, at least not the way it's really depicted with a minute or perfect at the second synchronization and bringing down an entire country on its knees. Clearly exaggerated, and again, thankfully exaggerated. And I realized that episode 17, that out of the 6 different archetypes, one of them, which is the insiders, was still worth mentioning as part of this first introduction sequence. We always think of hackers as an external threat, someone that is out of the company or a hacker in a foreign country. The truth is that on certain occasions, the threat is really within or already within the walls of the company. And those insiders, they need to be really dealt with cautiously and they need to be feared. There needs to be risk scenarios about insiders because they know about your controls, they know what you are looking at, and they can have a disastrous impact. Also, there I gave you 3 examples specific on the US market, but that's for you to look into the video if you want to know more. So that's it. Basically, it was kind of a 17 series of video to give you the main understanding what's going on today in cybersecurity, some of the key notions, and really focusing on this aspect. Cybersecurity is all about managing risks and managing the potential existence of a threat, someone who could maliciously try to breach into the infrastructures. If you are wondering what's next, the answer is cryptography, so not cryptocurrencies, but we will talk about crypto. And again, I will start a new series of small chapters discussing and presenting you with different notions. And I will increasingly move into, let's say, advanced cryptography. I will try to, again, make it as accessible as possible, but I do count on your feedback. So don't hesitate, again, to post some comments, reach out also on LinkedIn. I do sometimes share some of the videos there. It's not too hard to find me. But again, I'm looking forward to your feedback. I hope you enjoyed this series, and thanks for watching. See you then.